have some video example to share with you as well. I always like to share video. So today's topic is um, around developing flexible thinking through everyday shared experiences. And so this is um, something that we can't teach at a table, right? We can't teach children directly to think more flexibly. We can't lecture them. It's something that they develop through their lived experiences. And as guides and parents, our role is to create everyday moments where adaptation, recovery, exploration can actually unfold when we set the stage up right. So I'm going to talk with you about the developmental hierarchy in helping a child develop more flexible thinking. And I'm sure it's not limited to that because, perspective taking is an important part of thinking flexibly, where when you learn to borrow another person's perspective early in life, and then you start to develop your own perspectives, and then you can appreciate and compare your perspectives with others, and then that leads to being able to widen your perspective, which is what we all do when we have to make big decisions in our life. We have to explore the options and basically widen that field so that we can narrow it to find the best fit solution in that moment. I'm not going to be speaking as much about that, although that will be a good webinar for a future topic, but I'll be just talking about some of the other steps in RDI that we would move towards in helping an individual develop a more flexible thinking brain. And so it's really important. It matters for the long term, for the child's long-term well-being, not just in that moment. I always think about how people may consider what problem solving is at a very rudimentary level. And I think that it's often misunderstood. We're like, oh, they're a good problem solver. Sometimes I fear that they think that they're good at deriving the right answers. And it's not that. It's about developing the mental tools or habits in order to be able to consider options to find best fit solutions in the moment, because we don't necessarily have all of the answers available to us. So this process, though, it can help with emotional regulation when we need to manage our big feelings when things don't go as planned. So we can think flexibly around that in a sense where we can learn to consider things that, well, that didn't work out and now I'm a little bit stressed, but let me consider potentially how I could have done it otherwise. So considering hypothetical reenactments of things that you might try the next time you're engaged in that type of a challenge, or you can consider alternative outcomes to it's part of hypothetical, it's past and future, but thinking about how things might turn out can help you to be more prepared to consider alternative outcomes. So that can help with emotional regulation. It certainly develops resiliency when you're able to think flexibly. You're able to bounce back from disappointments or disruptions. Independence, being able to learn that you're somebody that can make decisions without a script, that you can consider your options. And that's, again, through your lived experiences, where you start to develop knowledge about what works for you, what doesn't work for you, things that you've tried before, creative, new, innovative ways of things that you could do differently the next time. Because the reality is that when we give kids scripts, kids with autism scripts, they're going to fail in the dynamic world because no two settings or situations are going to be completely the same. And so they're confused quite often because they're like, well, that's what I was told to do, and that's not working. So problem solving, we need to have flexible thinking, because that's why we have plan Bs. It's because we know that often our best laid out plans, our plan As, may not go as as plans. There's going to be things that are going to get in the way, and we're going to have to learn how to adapt to that. Um, Flexible thinking supports relationships, being able to engage in that reciprocal, spontaneous back and forth way, which requires flexibility. We can't just talk about the only one thing that we want to talk about every time we meet up with somebody. We have to be flexible and consider various perspectives. And then also, flexible thinking helps us to stay curious and open to new experiences for lifelong growth. So, when kids can develop flexible thinking, it can really help build their motivations, as well as they start to learn, or we help support the building of these developmental pieces, these basic foundational skills. So I'll be getting into that a little bit more here in a minute. So some misconceptions about flexible thinking. And we need to really understand what this is and what it's not. And so it's not compliance. It's not doing what you're being told to do, or just being really amicable or agreeable to go along with things, to avoid conflict. And it's not following directions, executing a script. It's not knowing the right answer through recall or memorization. And it's not just checking out and being really passive. So sometimes, I remember one time, it may have been 2005, where I had the good pleasure of seeing Dr. Gustine come to Toronto for a 2-day conference. And he talked about how some parents may think that their kids are really flexible, but the point that he wanted to make is they may not even notice in terms of their environment. So it's not that they're operating from a place of real rigidity, it's that they really aren't even picking up on what's central and what's not. And so therefore, it seems like they go with the flow, but they're really just like a jellyfish floating through life. So I think it's worth stating too, because I think we've all, well, for those of us who have worked with kids with autism, we've certainly have met kids that seem fairly flexible, but are they actually really engaging with their environment? And so flexible thinking, what is it? It's the ability to adapt, to adjust when circumstances shift. It's being able to recover, bounce back when things don't go as expected. It's being able to revise, which requires continual monitoring and updating of plans, sometimes mid-course. It requires flexible thinking, involves exploring, staying open to new possibilities, considering options. I like to say considering options before actions when I talk about exploring and experimenting. It's this idea of exploring, I think of as a mental process of exploring potential new ways, and then experimenting is playing with those to figure out what might be the best fit solution in that moment. And sometimes we don't have all the resources, but we can improvise, and we can potentially find the best fit solution, or we could figure out a good enough solution depending on what the situation calls for. So thinking about students who have great difficulty with autism, who might have great difficulty with putting out an assignment that it's not required. The printing quality of the printing is not the main focal point of the piece. But I've seen kids who have ripped up their paper over and over and over because their printing is not perfect. So they're not being very flexible here, or even looking at, well, in this case, printing my notes, that's good enough if it's not perfectly written. And so that flexible thinking can help with dynamic appraisal in terms of fuzzy logic, or good enough thinking, or best fit solutions. Okay. And so true flexibility is this internal dynamic process that's ultimately we want to see driven by the child's own thinking. However, parents learn to construct opportunities in daily life to practice this process through their shared relationship and mutual engagement. So it's parents learn how to construct these opportunities so that the children can develop these mental tools and habits. And that is a process. And ultimately, what we're looking at is that independence. So the other day, so my son, when he started his job, he created this spreadsheet, and he came home and he has achieved that ability to be completely responsible and independent in guiding his own experiences and learning from those experiences. So he created this spreadsheet called Lessons Learned. And in that way, he was recognizing that mistakes were going to happen and that he could be flexible and learn and grow from them versus being really hard on himself because he made a mistake. Flexibility also requires us being kind to ourselves, I believe, and knowing that we're going to make mistakes along the way. Conversely, though, I had a funny moment with him the other day where he was making a hamburger, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, and all of a sudden I heard him say, "Uh-oh." And I said, I didn't even think of it, but what came out of my mouth was, "Well, what did you learn?" And then he told me, which was, this is kind of funny actually, but what he told me was, I put the cheese on top of the raw part of the burger before I flipped it over. I'm sure we would remember that next time, but I think he got a little flexible. I'm sure the cheese got really charred as he had to work to try to get the raw burger underneath it cooked better. Um, anyway, what it was kind of funny was just, I said, "Well, what did you learn?" And I'm like, "Oh, no, that was just a big boo-boo," but not the end of the world, right? I'm sure you learned from that experience. And I guess develop some flexibility around it too. I'll have to ask him what he did. If it was me, I probably would have taken some of the burger out and put it on top and then made like a stuffed burger, if possible. I don't know. Anyway, parents are learning how to construct these opportunities in everyday life. And so this, our program really focuses on this clear stance that development occurs through experiences, not instruction. And flexible thinking can't be scripted, lectured, or memorized. It's lived and it's felt. And so we're helping kids learn how to, through the experience, learning how to adapt and learning how to reflect and learning and growing from those experiences. So again, they just can't be found in worksheets or in a therapy room. They're found in our daily lives, in our kitchens and parks and grocery store aisles. Okay, so this is a bit of a developmental sequence in thinking about, and it's not, I'm sure there's other aspects of RDI that will help with the process of flexible thinking. Flexible thinking, well, all aspects of development are also intertwined, but in our program, we can't address all of it at once. We have to slow down in a sense in order to speed up because we're building some of those earliest developmental foundations that often kids with autism have missed. And so it begins with adaptation. We want our kids to start to recognize that there's somebody, that they're a person that can adapt. And we do this initially with just noticeable differences. And this helps to keep the engagement from becoming static and allowing the child to not operate on autopilot, but to have to be more adaptive or engaged with their guide, with their parent. It starts with the parent in opportunities for co-regulation, where each person has a role, but the parent will add in little minor moments of just noticeable differences, changing their positioning or their pace, something that's very small, but in a sense, it does mark um, a noticeable change. And this is where some kids need to start off. I've had opportunities before where I've had a child handed a child something over here, over here, over here, over here, over here. They'll adapt, and then I might just move it slightly out of their range where they have to almost maybe stand up an inch to reach it. And I've seen kids completely shut down because that's too much. So every child is different. Others can manage far more. That just noticeable difference is going to be relevant to the child and how much adaptation they can do, how much change they can manage. So that's part of what we do as consultants, is learning what is that optimal level of just noticeable differences that we're going to start off with. And we are often doing that through engagement and co-regulation, where the child and the guide, the trusted partner, are coordinating their actions, and there's a continual adjustment that is needed between the two. Then we have variations, which are similar to just noticeable differences, but they're a bit more of an elaboration, if you will. There'll be bigger changes. It could be, rather than just movement or positioning or speed, it could be changing materials. It could be changing. It could be something that was previously anchored, meaning that the child was able to develop a known sense of that experience, but now we have the variation, which is vastly different. It could be, we play ball with a ball, but now we're going to play it with a stuffed animal. Or we've folded towels before, but now we're going to take that stuffed animal and we're going to put it into the towel that we're both holding on to, and we're going to make it bounce together. That's a much bigger variation, but yet the child, we hope when we're adding these, that they're not so chaotically created, and that there's not too many of them, that the child can perceive this change and not perceive it as threatening. So I'm going to talk a little bit more about co-regulatory patterns, but it's really helping kids make sense of it, so then we can productively add on variations to help the child learn a new way of perceiving their world and themselves and their relationship with others. So it's really opening up their world, and doing that. Once we teach them that there could be different ways that we could add in variations, and we want to also invite children to engage with us in co-variations, where it's a turn taking of ideas. I'm going to throw the ball this way, and now I'm interested to see how you're going to throw it. Or I'm going to put my block here, and now I'm curious to see what your idea is. So it's called co-variation. And typically speaking, parents need to often, or guides need to often, demonstrate some of the variation ideas before we could expect that the child may be able to derive or develop some of their own. Not always. Sometimes we have highly, highly controlling children who want to just lead the whole thing and tell others, what they're going to do. And in this case, that's why we say co-variation, because it's got to be a turn taking. And that's fine. Those kids that really have those ideas and they want to share them, they're wanting to experience their own agency and autonomy. And so I can appreciate that for sure. And I will allow that to happen as long as it stays within the framework. If I'm playing ball with a child who keeps sabotaging and throwing it outside of my reach or my ability to catch it, then I'm not going to accept that, because I can't play ball if they keep sabotaging and throwing it that way. So in that case, I usually make sure I'm in a distract-free space where I'm the best thing going since sliced bread, and I will stop the action and say, I wanted to play ball. And I would tell you that I've never not had a child go and get the ball and then throw it back to me to repair the engagement when that has been done. So then we move into exploration, and this is where parents can start by using self-talk and helping their children start to see that there's new ways that they're doing something. They start to expose their child to potentially thinking about the kitchen. There's multiple ways that I could slice eggs. I could do it with an egg slicer. I could do it with a cheese grater. I could do it with my hand. I could use a pastry blender, which one of my many moments of exploring different, I was setting up an engagement with the student, and I was thinking about all the tools that we could use to cut the eggs. And as I looked in the drawer, I went, oh, there's my grandmother's pastry blender that I never used, but wow, that's going to work really good in this bowl full of eggs. I just did this. It was great. And then another time I was exploring with a student, we were going to make banana bread, and I had this bag full of bananas, but I had a slotted spoon. I had a mushroom, a potato masher, slotted spoon, I think a fork. But we were going to explore the different tools and which one would work better to mash bananas. But this was the funny part was my very bright student said, why don't we just smash them in the bag? And I was so blown away. I thought, that's a really good idea. We didn't even end up trying the others because I thought, wow, I'm going to do that in the future. I did spotlight for him that I had these other things that we could try, but that I thought his idea was so brilliant. We were going to go with that. And then the experimentation, this is where you try out these ideas that you've explored. And so you're trying new ways, you're experimenting with them again to find best fit solutions or good enough thinking. So, and I always say, if it's not about getting the problem right, it's about developing the mental tool and habit to know that when you don't know or you're faced with uncertainty, that you can slow down and you can explore options, and often from your lived experiences or through your relationships with others. You might borrow a person's perspective and thinking about how you might handle something, but you're ready to explore. You're not locked in to one way. And now I'm going to have a meltdown because it didn't work out. Right. So it's about developing. And I believe that this process really helps kids to also reduce the anxiety that they may feel when they feel stuck, because they may in the past have only thought about something in one way. And it can really catch us parents off guard sometimes, because unbeknownst to us, they may have developed some really rigid schemas around the way that they operate. And the next thing you know, we're like, whoa, I had no idea that was going to be so difficult for you. One of my clients would always take his son to his friend's house to go swimming, and the friend was away on vacation and said, feel free to come over while we're gone. But in this case, rather than going through the front door of the house, they went through the side gate to get to the pool. And the father was shocked because the son had been to the house at least 20 times before, but now he had a full-blown meltdown because we were going through the side of the house, not through the front of the door. So he hadn't developed this ability to think flexibly, like, we're still going to the pool. We can get there through the side gate, or we could get there through the front of the door. So anyway, and eventually we get to flexible thinking. We're able to navigate the unexpected with confidence and curiosity. It doesn't appear all at once. It emerges over time, each step building on the other. And parents know, and with the consultants, know exactly where a child is at and what to build towards next. So it's this process of laying the important foundations um, so that they're properly developmentally sequenced and built off of one another. Okay. So before flexibility comes adaptation. So we work on adaptation from the beginning. And not too long ago, Dr. Gutstein, in one of the case consultations, had said that he felt that it was really important early on for children to learn that they could be adapters, that they could be adjusters or adapters. I'm somebody that can adapt. Wow, look at you adapt. So that I think that that's something that parents can spotlight for their kids. They can preview for it. Like, we're going to do this activity, but we both have to adapt to one another. Some kids, depends on their language capacity. You may not say it to them. They may just experience it in an embodied way. It can start to be labeled, though. You just wouldn't necessarily preview for it because they may not even understand what the word adapting is. So that's something you have to keep in mind in terms of who the learner is when you're first starting. So we often want to jump straight into flexible thinking, but the developmental foundations come first. So learning to become an adjuster, managing just noticeable differences, modifying the action. So when you're adapting, you have to change what you're doing in response to the new information. And I'm going to show you a couple of videos here in a second to show you what that looks like. And then returning to an equilibrium after some unexpected things happen. So that's adapting too, and adapting to changing circumstances, moving forward even when conditions shift mid activity, that you can adapt and adjust as you go. Okay, so I'll play this video here for you first. This one's actually a little bit more complex. This parent was working with the son while emptying the dishwasher, and she knew what her goal was, what she was focusing on prior to assigning the roles. He's going to empty the dishwasher and she's going to put it away in this cupboard. So we need to start to play it.
Yeah, because we wash them with hot water. Right? Running hot? It's still hot. Hot water can't make it hot. Yeah, well, it's a good question. We wash it with hot water. So look at how sparkly it is. Oh. Ooh. Okay, baby, you're gonna have to wait.
Okay, that was a little moment. So she's established this pattern, and then there's moments when he's not referencing her at all, but she just adjusts her hand out in a way that gives him the responsibility that he's got to hand it to her. Right there. So he had to notice she's not taking it, so I need to adjust. He's kind of getting it now where he's like moving his hand back and forth.
Let's see. If you're doing it over there, then I gotta do it here. Oh, and then I gotta do that there and there. Oh, I got that song in my head from today. What song?
So she does this periodically throughout the video where she doesn't grab it from him, but allows him to notice her and then adjust his movement with her movement. Okay, this one is a little bit more complex where this mother and son are learning to adapt to one another based on mom's role is to throw this spongy item and his role is to catch it. And he doesn't care if he doesn't catch it. He's having a good time, but he's doing a lot of adapting. Get the gist of that. Now let me move forward. Okay, this one was a client who told her son that their jobs were to he's going to throw the socks down to her. And
I'm coming down with the basket. Are you excited?
so she's just setting the stage and explaining to him what they're going to do. He's going to throw the socks down to her, and she's going to be down here on the lower level with her basket. And the role is she labels it. It's kind of funny. When she first started using the word adopt with him, he thought adapt rather. He's obsessed with dogs and wants to adopt a dog. So when she said adapt, he said, "We're going to adopt a dog." So she had to use the word adjuster that he could adjust. So she explains it to him that she's going to move back and forth a little bit. He's going to have to watch and adapt because his role is to try to get the socks into the basket. Okay.
This way. And it might go this way.
So she even
And it might go this way.
demonstrates for him or pre-enacts it.
You get to adjust. So if I go this way, you adjust and come over here. If I go this way, you adjust and go over here. And if I go in, whoa, good job. What? Oh. Oh, no, 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 just one. Just one. I can't get them all when you throw so many.
So she throws them back up for him so he can try again.
Oh, that one went in.
And she's having trouble. There we go.
Oh, you got it. Oh. Oh no! I'm over here now. Oh no! Oh no! Oh, there we go.
So she slowed down at times. She wanted to slow the process at times. So it was a smart idea. She ducked underneath the landing so he couldn't see her, just to slow him down so it wouldn't become too chaotic. When she gave me feedback at one point, she said, "Oh, he didn't adjust." And I said, "Oh, no, he did. He threw with harder force. Even if he didn't move his body position over here, he still adjusted by throwing harder to reach her over there and the direction the direction of his throw." So that's just another little example of adjusting. Okay, so so the simple sentence, something changed and I changed with it. It captures the essence of adaptation. It's about recognizing a shift in the environment and responding meaningfully. So it shows up in small everyday moments that are easy to overlook. And if you are professional or a parent that is on the RDI learning system, it just occurred to me that I think I'm going to send out this recording afterwards. And with it, what I think will be very helpful is to also send out some information. If you haven't seen it before, it's on how to help parents start to recognize opportunities and little moments of micro adjustments or adaptations in their child's daily experience so that they could be more aware and therefore create opportunities for their child to adjust. Okay. So it could be the different pacing with faster, slower, adjusting the rhythm. It could be a different plan. It could be a different sequence. Maybe something happens in a different order and the child can recalibrate without distress. It's can be a different outcome. So the result isn't what was expected and the child accepts it anyway and moves forward. So there's a really cute video of a little boy named Neely and his family, and it's on the RDI learning system, and they're making cookies, but the cookies get too big. And so they have to adapt their way of thinking because the plan didn't go as expected. But he accepted it because, well, he realized too that the cookies still tasted good and that they could try again next time. But it's a really beautiful video. So it's interesting thinking about working with some kids too who are very bright and maybe controlling, but they're the ones that often will keep us on our toes the most because they will develop really rigid schemas very quickly about how things should go. And so we almost need to create some little change in which they can adapt to or a new variation so that they start to understand that there's not this one right way to do something. And they may say, oh, I know how to do that, and just want to take it over and do it on their own because that's easier for them to do. When you're being guided, there is some level of uncertainty because you're not in control. And so that's often why kids may not recognize the payoff at first of a guiding relationship. And so it's to be expected that there'll be some resistance. But once they start to experience themselves in that safe relationship with manageable challenges and opportunities, they start to develop a greater sense of who they are and who they're becoming. And that fuels their motivation. So this is a beautiful video of a father and son, and very playful. They're putting dishes away. So they had started the sequence of just establishing a co-regulatory pattern. I'm going to give you the plate. You can put it on the stack. But then he adds in these are bigger variations than what I would call just noticeable differences. And what you're going to see is how the child adapts to that. So we've got fast, stuck, under the leg, under both legs. Uh-oh, a bowl. That's confusing. That's flexible. I'm not sure. A little confusing, but it was out of the ordinary. It's a variation. Before we had plates, now we have bowls. He just accepted what his child was going to do with that. I felt, even watching back the video, that it was a bit confusing, but the child adapted. No big deal. The child is curious and he's anticipating. And each time he comes back to dad, he really starts to study him. What are you going to do now, dad? And he's adapting his pace to match his father's pace. I love this moment where he does the whole slow motion thing. Now he goes fast again. Oh, duck again. And that moment was kind of is one of my favorite moments of this video because, hey, one variation, okay. Maybe sometimes it's good to go back to the prior pattern for regrouping. In this case, I don't think it was any particular variation. It was just variation after variation after variation after variation until I think he reached this child's threshold and surpassed his edge because it was too much. And so he ran out of the room. Yeah. So it can be difficult for children on the spectrum who are faced with anxiety because adaptation doesn't come naturally. And it's not a character flaw or a behavior choice. It's a developmental challenge that requires understanding, awareness, and guidance over time. And so often kids with autism, they have that preference for certainty or what we often refer to as stability maintaining. When something changes, it can feel threatening rather than interesting. When something unexpected happens, it can feel threatening rather than interesting. They may depend more on routines. A lot of well-intended professionals, I've experienced them in my boy's life where they thought routine, routine, routine. We've got to keep the routine so that we don't have to experience any stress or meltdowns. But these kids are not learning how to adapt and essentially go with the flow when they keep things so rigid in a sense. So, routines can provide comfort for sure, but without variation, they can become rigid scripts. New elements and overwhelmed by novelty, new elements and familiar activities can flood a child's processing system, making adaptation feel impossible. Perhaps there was far too much novelty in that video with father and son over the course of some time and ended up feeling overwhelming for him, reached his threshold, so he took off. Kids with autism may struggle with unexpected changes. Even small surprises can derail participants when the nervous system isn't ready to adapt. So this difficulty with adaptation is not resistance. It may be a drive for stability, maintaining to reduce uncertainty. That's where the uncertainty can be very anxiety provoking because kids don't have the developmental capacity to adjust to these changes or uncertainty. This is a video of a student of mine who I was adding in just noticeable differences, and then I added in a variation. I'm going to start it here. It was a simple activity that I called Clips, Please. He's only 2.5 years old. I give him time to explore the clips that are in the cup. I scaffold by positioning my cup right in front of him. He was able to pour confidently. He adjusts his body position with mine. He's anticipating my action in conjunction with his action because he shifted his gaze to me after he took his role. He's considered at this time nonverbal. He just tried to say clips, please. It was a co-regulatory pattern, and he had an action in the engagement. So I've learned that that's very powerful for kids in helping them learn to talk. Just noticeable differences in positioning and pacing.
Clips, please. Oh, thank you. Look what I have now.
So now I add a bigger variation of marbles.
Ooh, marbles.
And he's like, that's too much of a change for me. I must have watched this video 30 times now. There was a period of time where I watched and thought maybe it was a sensory thing because the marbles made a little bit more clanging noise. But the last few times I've watched it, I really think it was just the big change. Because he wants to come over and look in the cup to see what's in there again and realizes, yeah, it's still those marbles. In this case, I reduced or simplified his role by assuming it because I wanted to see if I continued to model both roles with the marbles, would it give him time to regroup so that he could come back to me? And then I decided, well, I'm going to go back to the prior pattern where we were successful before, which was with clips, and now we see him come back again. So this video is really fascinating when we think about what was just noticeable difference for him and then what tipped the scale where it was too much and he disconnected. And it was when I changed the materials from clips to marbles. But now you see he's re-engaging again because it's clips again. Okay, so I'm going to move on. So the role of co-regulation, children learn to reference others because they learn to look toward their trusted partner for cues about how to respond. They monitor actions, noticing what the other person is doing, and they adjust accordingly. They match their pace, pausing and moving together in a shared rhythm. And they're sharing these experiences. So they're building the sense of we did this together, which deepens the relationship. And of course, children get to experience their own agency and autonomy when we give them a role that they can be confident in conjunction with our role. And that feels really good to kids too. I had a parent came to see me one time after, I think it was maybe only the third time that their son had ever come. And he had probably been over therapized. He was about 12 years old by then. And she had never experienced his response, the kind of response that he gave when she said, we're going to go see Lisa today. And he was really excited. And anyway, she came to the session and she said, I'm baffled. She said, my son loves you. And I said, well, let's be clear. He doesn't even know me. But what he loves is how he feels when he's with me because he got to experience his own agency and autonomy. So, okay. So again, we're helping. Flexibility doesn't develop in isolation. It develops through relationships. And co-regulation is the process by which a child learns to co-participate, monitor, coordinate, and adjust alongside their partner. And the parent or the guide become a dynamic reference point, not just a source of instruction. So parents learn to focus on the process of developing the neural integration necessary for dynamic intelligence. And so it's this process of knowing, like, it's not a skill. Like, we're not trying to get the child. Sometimes we want to teach a child to learn to tie their shoes, and that's a product and that's a skill that we want them to learn, but it often still involves a process of thinking about how to guide it, how to break it down, how much time to spend in the moment, what role you might have in helping the child learn to tie his shoes, what role the child might have. And so it's a process, which is beautiful. And that's the process too. Parents are becoming the brain architects for their child, which is so cool. So co-regulation in action can happen in everyday activities like washing fruit. The parent could wash the fruit, the child could put it in the container, and or maybe they're both putting fruit on the dish where they're adapting their pace to one another, and just and coordinating actions when we're in sync with somebody else. That feels good. It feels good to be in flow or to be in sync with somebody else. So the goal isn't a perfect snack. It's a shared experience of coordinating and adjusting through a mutual point of reference. And so when we have those frameworks, that helps us make sense of what it is that we're doing here together. And then within that, we can add the opportunities for adaptation or variations or whatever our goal might be. This is a little video of, I clipped it. The first part, they were chopping these fruits up, but now in this moment, I just love this first part here. And I thought I'd show it to you because they're, making something with fruit. So it's an everyday experience. It's playful.
Okay, so here, this is where we'll put them after. So we have apples,
grapes, watermelon, this.
pineapple. Tell me what I do, okay? We'll build together, and then I'll follow you. Okay.
So she's leading by showing him some different ways that they can build these fruit skewers together, different patterns or variations. And he's monitoring her and using her as a reference point to do so.
Ooh, that's a really soft piece. It's hanging on by a thread. It's good enough.
Oh,
Yeah, that one looks harder. Oh, changed my mind.
what? Again, watermelon?
I like it. It's
So and even that moment was hard to see, but she said, I changed my mind. And so she adjusted and he had to adjust along with her. Now she's going to let him take the lead and decide. So they're co-regulating. There's also some co-variation happening here because he's going to do some different things that she hadn't done before.
Oh, I see.
I knew you were gonna pick this again.
So that moment naturally occurred where he kind of poked himself. And then a really nice guiding moment ensued where she then shows him how to hold it and poke it.
Is I push it like this, and this way my hand doesn't get in the way. I push it
Not
like
this.
right, so I would push it like, see my fingers down this
This.
side. Yeah, let's test it out and see if we can do it the same. You're picking a cantaloupe like this.
And this was a baseline after we took
Yeah.
I don't know, about a month break over the summer. And she had worked with him for about 18 months. I counted, she integrated 8 different goals into this one segment, which was probably about a 10-minute video. It was pretty. Okay. So you can do co-regulatory patterns in your everyday life. You your everyday, not necessarily classroom, but it's an opportunity for learning. So through cooking and baking, through laundry, building projects, gardening, walking together, grocery unpacking. I used to go to the grocery store with my boys, not necessarily on a very busy day, but I would give them the role when they were young adolescents. And I think people thought I was crazy, but I would give them the role of pushing the cart. And they had to kind of continually monitor me. Of course, I made sure I had their eye contact, but they had to keep an eye on me because you never knew when I was going to lob something across the grocery store 10 feet for them to have to catch. So it was a pretty expansive variation on a co-regulatory pattern that we used to have where they had to stay side by side with me to make sure that they held the basket. So if I put the apples in that they would go directly in the basket. But now they're pushing a big old cart and I'm literally lobbing. I usually was pretty careful with my selection. So they were things like flour tortillas. I never threw, anything real breakable items, but it was a lot of fun. That was just another way too. That was a very big expansion from, starting in a distract-free space in my own home to moving to the kitchen, to moving to the park, to moving, to big box stores. This mom is just practicing with her son, just adding in some variations, just noticeable differences in the way that she's handing him the laundry. So he has to monitor her and he's learning to adapt. Now she's going to throw him two things very quickly. And he loves it. This little boy was like super ripe for RDI. A different way, different variation. I'm just going to hand you the basket. And then at one point, she, sorry, I'm just looking at the time. They reversed roles, which was even a bigger variation. I must have clipped that part out. Anyway, where he took on the role that she had. But anyway, she throws high, low, two at a time. Lots of little variations and opportunities for him to have to adapt. And so patterns are so important, and they help create that sense making. And as children get to experience repeated success, it builds the child's sense of self, their autobiographical memory, or what we can refer to as their child's agency, their ability to influence their world personally and interpersonally, and their autonomy, their sense of self. Okay. And then safety, emotional safety with that trusted partner is the prerequisite for all meaningful learning. When we feel safe, we can engage in more challenges. If we feel overwhelmed and our nervous systems are hijacked, then it can be very difficult. And so that's why, the co-regulation, think of it as kind of like the waves of an ocean, of this ebb and flow that requires constant adjusting, but the parents figure out when they're going to step in and maybe do a little bit more work and when they need to step back and maybe do a little bit less work. So patterns become the familiar base from which variations and co-variations and eventually flexibility can emerge. We want to help them. That's why frameworks are so important, because we can elaborate a framework, adding in more complexity more quickly than we ever could if we had 100 different activities, because it's new. But when child can make sense of an experience, we have the ability to add to that and change things up. So variations that can, the activity stays familiar enough to feel safe, but something shifts, creating a gentle adaptive challenge. And roles, so what can be varied? The roles, who does what this time? You can reverse roles. We typically say don't reverse roles with a child until after they've already been really competent first in their role before you change it. And also you have to consider the child and whether or not they, you don't want to have to prompt a child. Let's say they take on the role of being the giver. They're going to be the one that's going to have to hand you the materials. Then you don't want to have to prompt them. overly prompt them, like, okay, hand me that one now. Okay, give that one to me now, and constantly telling them what to do. But we can do role reversals as children do gain competency. Okay, so tools and materials can be different. Location, you can make food at the kitchen table, you can make it at the kitchen counter, picnic table. Timing or pacing can change, sequence, it can change the order of familiar steps. I often do vinegar and baking soda, little volcanoes in muffin tins. And sometimes I lead with vinegar, and sometimes I lead with baking soda, and sometimes I put all the baking soda in before I put all the vinegar in. And sometimes I put in food coloring. So we get to change it up a little bit and help the children see same but different while adding in change. This video is a cute little, this little girl was fairly new to RDI, and there was a ball on a string hanging from the drop ceiling, and father is modeling different ideas of how to swing the ball. He'd swing it this way or swing it that way or pull it over his head, and it would kind of bounce over to her.
Oh, Katie does the same.
And at first, when he
Nice.
added a variation, she would do the same, but she's learning from his variations.
That's fun. Whoops.
And she's quite resilient to not catching it. It's not a big deal. Let me just forward a little bit.
Boing.
She slows down to think about what her variation is going to be.
Boing.
Okay. What?
Boing. Behind his head. Boing.
This little girl is getting her master's degree now, and she's got her driver's license.
One more time. Here we go. Woo! Ooh! Oh!
And she adapts and runs and gets the ball.
Good girl. You got the ball.
Yourself.
Good girl. How about just kind of sweeping the ball this way?
So I'm guiding and helping the dad think about different variations that he can do. This is the same girl, and we're doing very rapid variations without any pre-calling, and you're going to see, I'm probably going to skip through this fairly quickly, but what you're going to notice is the constant coordinating of actions amidst this variations that she's able to adapt to without any issue at all. At first, it was just a simple switch. And then I sped up the pace of the switch. And then she initiated a switch.
You got me.
Okay. So there was those switches. Then we switched to this side of the room, and she was able to adjust. Caught off guard a little bit at first.
Switch. Let's try to do this.
And then we had another variation where we're both throwing two balls at the same time. I don't even have to say 1, 2, 3, go. She is really watching, monitoring me so carefully.
Throw the blue one. Yes. Okay.
Then we start one bounces, one throws. She was able to do that better than I think I kept forgetting.
Oh, when somebody can't.
And then we moved into crashing. I think we tried to crash the balls. We're passing, bouncing. I think at one point we did start trying to crash them. I must have picked that out. Anyway, it was really phenomenal, the amount of variations that she was able to do. Okay, so without variations, children memorize the steps, they become fluent at the script, but helpless when something changes. The activity builds competence, but not adaptability. And it also builds those rigid schemas. Okay, when children can adapt, they learn to read the situation, monitor their partner, and adjust their actions, just like we saw what Katie did in that prior video. The activity builds both confidence and flexibility. She went to a new school. I think it was slightly after that engagement that I had with her, and she was able to engage with a non-skilled guide. It was her EA. It was a wonderful EA, but she was able to do all kinds of really tricky hand clapping and bouncing on yoga balls while they did it at the same time, and then they would roll on the balls and blast off, and they did all these beautiful coordinated co-regulatory engagements that she was completely independent in and holding her own. So anyway, these are just different types of variations that you can do. It can be helpful to sit down sometimes and think about all the different possibilities of variations that would be meaningful and authentic. So the parents' job is to be the guide, not the solver. So it's important for parents not to overcompensate for kids or to move from being a problem solver to a mindful guide, so that we're giving the children the opportunities of how to figure things out. So what we want to see parents do more of is spotlight the challenge or the opportunity. It could just be a uh-oh, or it could be a modeling of a let me think. Coming up with one idea and then perhaps waiting to see if the child might, with that pause, initiate one of their own ideas. Okay. And so when we think about growth, not all difficulties equal. Of course, not every child is the same. So we very much customize our programs in RDI. The kind of struggle that produces growth is productive. We know that challenge must happen in order for neural integration to occur. Challenge that is real but manageable within a relationship feels safe. Okay, and so the parent's role is to try to find that balance. If there's too little challenge, then there's no growth. If there's the optimal level of challenge and it's a real challenge plus that emotional support, then and the child can experience that little bit of tension that can be a productive experience, a productive tension or struggle. This is where flexible thinking is born. And if it's too much challenge, then we're going to see a child who's going to be overwhelmed, shut down, experience anxiety. It's going to be beyond the capacity to cope. And so we want to make sure that we are balancing this level of finding that optimal balance, or that edge state, and then periodically going to an edge +1 state of challenge. And this slide I love because we know that challenge is essential for neural integration to occur. It happens when separate regions of the brain learn to communicate, coordinate, and fire together. Challenge is the catalyst for neural integration to occur. So it forces the brain to recruit new pathways, link prior knowledge with present demands, and form fresh associations. So many of you, I'm sure, have heard this phrase, neurons that fire together, wire together. And so I like this one better by Dr. Daniel Siegel. It's a little clunky, but where attention goes, and that's the parent, they have the ability to spotlight and to frame experiences so that it's more meaningful for the child, and to be able to connect those experiences to build that child's sense of self and who they're becoming. So where attention goes, neurons flow and neural integration grows. New neural integration grows. Right, so parents help direct kids' attention by spotlighting the problem, but not the solution. And depending on where the child is in their development, very simple for very high needs kids can often still be very effective for helping them figure out what it is that they need to do if they've dropped something. They're not telling them what to do. The children are still able to figure it out. Other times, the parent might spotlight that there's a problem, but then they might need to model potential solutions. So I feel like this is a little redundant, so let's move on. That's just some research. When I send out the recording for this webinar, I will share this PowerPoint with you so that you have it as well, because again, I realize that I went a little bit over here, but this is some of the research about that neural integration and how it develops in children. And just because kids have neurodivergence or they have autism doesn't mean that parents can't learn to mindfully slow down and understand with the support of their consultant as well, but learn how to understand how to construct opportunities that will do just that. Because our kids are human too, and it's part of being human. So, and it's possible. So they learn to set these challenges beyond the infant's existing competencies. And I'm going to share that with you. This is just a really cute little video of Dr. Sheely and Dr. Gutstein's granddaughter, and how Dr. Sheely had taken advantage of this opportunity to allow her little granddaughter, Twyla, to struggle. Productively, she scaffolded a little bit by putting the orange back within her reach.
It rolls, doesn't it?
And eventually she had success. Now, this was a two-part video. It was a much longer segment. That little girl struggled for quite some time, but she allowed her to experience mastery by eventually getting that. Okay. So moving beyond the sequence of, we start to see the emergence of curiosity. So when adaptation is supported, co-regulation is practiced, and when variations are introduced with some mindfulness, with some care, then we start to see some remarkable things happen. The child's ability to engage with uncertainty, it changes. They developed a lot more resiliency around that. So the child is learning at that early stage to socially reference when they're faced with uncertainty about how to perceive new experiences and manage situations. And so they're learning to learn from their guide, to borrow their perspectives. How should I understand this? What should what should I do? And then the child in the growing stage begins to trust their own ability to navigate the unexpected that happens in the world and manage and mentally engage in shared experiences of solving problems together. And then eventually we start to see the child initiate exploration driven by genuine curiosity rather than anxiety. So we start to see that they are developing the ability to explore and consider flexible ways of engaging with the same situation or problem. And so a growth mindset can be built through play. We often want our families to be playful. Dr. Sheely actually says in RDI that we work playfully and we work playfully and we play hard. No, I forgot what she says, but something like, and we're playing very intentionally. So, anyway, we try new ideas in a safe space without pressure to get it right. So it's this playful process of exploration, trying out new ideas just for the joy of discovery. And so there's freedom to consider various ideas to try out, freedom to explore. There's freedom to make mistakes. We're going to learn. We're going to learn through the experience. And there's freedom to experiment. What worked best? What was our favorite way? What was good enough? What was the best fit solution? And this helps build knowledge and resiliency over time. And this is just a short video that I love. And we're nearing the end here, but this is a short video that I love because this father is exploring and experimenting with his son how to crush beer cans. So they've got a variety of different types of shoes. And he had just offered, do you want to try the boot? So he says yes. And in some elements of this video, he squishes it laying down on its side. He turns it over and squishes it upside down. And he'll squish from the top down. And then this part I thought was just
I got high heels on.
so cute because haven't we all done that as children? Made high heels out of crushed cans. So anyway, this video again was much longer, but it's a fun way, and the parent took on this goal of let's explore and experiment how we can crush dad's beer cans. Okay, so here's your key takeaways. It's a journey. It's not a checklist. As we're helping our kids develop this flexible thinking. You can't teach it at a table. It happens through real world experiences, and shared moments too, because we need that competent, mindful guide to help bring the attention to this is what we can explore, or this is how we're going to adapt or be flexible. And then it comes before flexibility. So we want to build that adaptation first and support the recovery from just noticeable differences before introducing. You got to play with that. What's a just noticeable difference versus, what's a variation that's optimal for the child? And relationships are the medium of growth. So co-regulation with a trusted partner is how children learn to navigate an unpredictable world. They learn through their most trusted guide, which is often their parents. And so you don't need to make dramatic shifts. Something simple sometimes can be enough. Just a peripheral change, just to allow the child to see like, oh, I did it like this before, but this time we did it this way. And parents can spotlight that. Oh, we're using a different spoon this time. I used to feed my kids cereal out of my smaller saucepans, my little pans, or I would make a picnic for dinner and we'd eat on the floor. But they were often manageable changes, just for fun, just to help them to be more adaptive. I often tell my clients, I had a client one time that said, oh, my son had his birthday party. I said, oh, how did it go? I go, oh, not well at all. I said, well, tell me more. And he said, well, he was very anxious about whether the reptile guy was coming or not. And so that was a big deal. But also we rearranged all his bedroom furniture the day before. And I just thought maybe rearranging all his bedroom furniture the day before his big birthday party was probably not the best idea. So I tell families, if you want to start just adding in a little bit of change at times, that they're not going to do it on the first day of school and really mix things up, because it could be, too much. They might not have the resources available for it that day. So anyway, and then just thinking about guiding, not solving. So constructing these opportunities where the children learn to adapt to variations and engage in co-variation and explore ideas to test out. So every small adaptation is a step forward. Flexible thinking is not a destination, it's a direction. And so our most important work is creating the everyday conditions where children can safely encounter the unexpected, adjust with confidence, and discover the joy of adapting. Okay, so start small. One tiny variation this week. Be mindful, attuned guide, and then trust the process. Development unfolds at its own pace. So kids, everybody's different. Some may need more practice than others. And this is where consultants can help guide the pace of, ultimately, we're creating independence, independent thinkers, flexible thinkers. And it takes time to build up that neural integration. But if you don't try, you'll never get there. I know my sons started when they were 5 and 8. My 8-year-old was in life skills in high school, and that was somewhat unfortunate, but because their biggest goal was to teach him how to ride the bus and make hamburger helper. But he owns and operates his own vehicle, which he takes great pride in, and bought a brand new truck, and it looks brand new to this day. It's probably 5 years old. And he's married, and he lives across town, and he's traveled to I don't know how many different countries over the last 4 or 5 years, more than I have. So anyway, I'm quite proud of him. And this is my boy, Anthony, my oldest, and this is my younger one, Evan. And they are the light in my life. And in fact, I gave him the oldest one this plaque. It's my phrase, never, never, never give up. And it's because I know that neurointegration takes time, and I just wanted to and continue to grow throughout our lifespan. So I just kept going. And it really wasn't until they were basically young adults that I'm like, okay. I mean, I could see moments. I felt like we're okay, we're okay. But I didn't have a crystal ball, so I didn't know that they would be able to be completely independent at one point in time in their lives. And so anyway, this if you I'm going to share this in the handout. I'll send you all the recording, and then this is the link to this conference I'm going to be putting on with my colleague Gabby. We're going to be presenting at the Okanagan College in Kelowna, and that will be on August 7th. And so you can check out this link to see all the topics that we're going to be discussing. And it'll be available online or in person, and it'll be recorded for later viewing too, if it's not a good time zone for those of you. And then the other thing that I thought I would share with you. So there's that the early bird it's just going to go up to 150 on July 1st. So 125 now. And then I have a 5-part on-demand parent training, which covers some of the core concepts of RDI, the theory, but lots of video like you saw here today. Maybe I don't snip through it as quickly as I did today. I just wanted to give you a taste of it, but there's lots of video demonstration or a video example of the application of the theory in the on-demand parent training. And you can look at this link to see what the modules consist of, and I'm offering that at a 25% discount currently as well. So that's it for now. And thank you so much for being here. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any questions for me.
I have a question.
Sure.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
Hi.
I can. Hi there.
Hi, I'm a parent, and I'm just taking in and learning what RDI is about. And so when you're working with an RDI person one-on-one with your family, how many sessions do you typically do with a family? Or is this like a lifelong relationship, or how does this work?
Oh, that is a good question. So when I'm working with families, my main goal is to work myself out of a job. And I've done that many times. So to work myself out of a job means that I'm going to teach parents everything that I know so that they no longer need me,
Mhm.
which is really cool. And in terms of the way that I would work with families as a consultant. So I do work one-to-one with children for the purpose of assessing or testing out new goals. And then I guide the parent on what that appropriate developmental goal is based on how the child presents. So every child is so uniquely, they're uniquely unique in themselves. And so that's why our program it's not formula like do A, then do B. I had a trainee one time ask me, gosh, I wish RDI was written up like that. And I said, well, it'd be pretty hard to teach dynamic intelligence from a static program. because everybody is so different. Some kids might need to work a little bit more on this than they do that. But anyway, back to my role as a RDI consultant for parents, I will I have a program guide that offers different packages, or if families want to do the hourly rate, they can do that. But even still, the program guide, it outlines the ideal way in which I would work with families. And I found that most of my families I meet with every second week, and they will send me a video in between. So they know what they're working on, and then they're going to practice at home. And I will teach them to self-evaluate, to learn from their own experiences, because that's where the real knowledge happens. It becomes, parents learn how to become very mindful guides, learn how to learn from their own experiences with their child, reflect on them, and then they take that knowledge with them, which turns into intuitive wisdom. And so it's not nearly as costly as an ABA program, for example, when you're hiring all these therapists to work with your child. I know I've been there, done that before I found RDI. And so, and it can look like, it can vary. So I have a family in Alberta. I have families all over the world, actually, but I have a family in Alberta that we meet, most time we meet every week on Tuesdays. So, but other families want to meet every second week. And then ultimately, again, working myself out of the job, families will get to a certain point, and then we may say, okay, let's break for a bit, or and come back if you need me, or let's move to once a month, or maybe we'll meet once every 2 weeks, but we'll talk about it, because sometimes families just want that accountability, or they want that second kind of look at where they're going. But yeah, ideally, I work myself out of a job, not at all creating codependence.
Which is really nice. Yeah.
Yeah.
And do you guys work? Oh, sorry. Do you guys work at all with emotional regulation tools?
Well, we eventually can. It's interesting though, because the way that development occurs, we're not. I've not seen a lot of success with trying to give children strategies in controlling their emotions, because often what happens is their brains are already hijacked by the time they need these tools and they're not accessible to them. So what we're doing is we're building up their growth seeking mindset. We're building up their resiliency through these shared experiences, but we're also building up their ability to develop greater self-awareness. What works for me, what doesn't. Greater social competency, the ability to appreciate that other people have different perspectives, to be able to socially reference, to develop the mental tools to explore and experiment so they can find best fit solutions, the ability. We have a curriculum that basically spans from birth to adulthood. And it's based off of neuroscience and typical development, and then looking at the research, the latest consensual research in autism. And then who that unique individual is. So in terms of emotional regulation tools, popular psychology would say today that self-regulation occurs first through co-regulation. So we that's been a part of our program for over 20 years, co-regulation. But we help parents even learn how to move into the role of facilitator, which is where they may take a back seat and help support the child's independent thinking and growth. They're there if need be, to support. But again, it's kind of that helping parents know when to step in and when to step out. So there could be so many different reasons why, or potential. Yes, there could be compensations to learn. I think we could all benefit from knowing that, gee, I'm far more regulated when I exercise regularly or when I get good sleep, or gee, sometimes I really benefit from practicing deep breathing. So it doesn't mean that we wouldn't use some of those tools, but we're looking more at building the developmental foundations so that the emotional regulation can occur versus trying to teach a child to use strategy that doesn't have the capacity to be able to do so.
Okay.
I hope that makes sense. I have a student right now, one in Alberta, who the psychologist is trying to give him strategies, and his occupational therapist is trying to give him strategies. But when his peers ask him at school to stop talking, he says, I can't. He doesn't know that he can even manage his own brain. And so therefore, to expect that he's going to be able to access these tools when he's emotionally heightened and stressed out on his own, he's not able. He can do it when he's with his parents, but he can't do it when he's not supported and they just don't have the staff at school to sit down and do that type of thing with him.
Mhm.
So we're working first on helping him to develop greater relational skills with others. Children learn first through their external physical world, says Dr. Lev Vygotsky, who's a famous Russian psychologist who came up with the idea of the zone of proximal development. That's the child's here, and we want to help them get there. It's through that trusted guide that we help bridge that piece between here and there. But anyway, he also says they learn through the external world. They learn to borrow perspectives from others. They learn to be good observers. Then they start to develop this sense of self and where they're sharing perceptions and joint attention. And now they're engaging in the world, with others through a shared lens. And then eventually what happens is that work becomes more internalized, where children are able to recognize things like, how are my actions impacting your actions? Ooh, not well. I need to adapt and adjust because this isn't working for us. But that's more of a mental capacity and requires self-awareness. So in our program, we definitely focus on helping support that autobiographical memory and that positive sense of self, and really learning through experiences.
Makes sense. Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for asking. Okay. Well, thanks for being here. I'm going to be doing these on a fairly regular basis. We've been a little spotty. I don't think I did one last month, but I'm going to do one a month moving forward. So if you had registered for this, then I believe you'll be on my mailing list, and then you'll get notified when I have my next webinar. Okay. Okay. Thank you for being here.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care. Bye-bye.